awesome. So now your perspective, though, I mean, you're happy here and you like it.
Yes. I mean, it's still an adjustment. It's only been 3 years that I've been here full time.
Right.
And it's still an adjustment. It's not something, because we were in New York City for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I lived in London. And then I was in France. It's a different world.
You lived in London too?
Yeah.
That's why I went to Europe. So super quick, not to interrupt you, but I was going to move to London. That was the idea. I wanted to spend a couple weeks in Europe, and I was going to go, and I had this whole thing set up in Bloomsbury in London, and I was going to move my media company over there. That was the idea. And then the pandemic hit. Or not the pandemic, 9/11.
Yes.
And that was it. And so I moved to Boston, which is like New England. It's the second closest in this country.
Yeah. And I was supposed to be here for 2 years, and then in New York, I took an internship, and then I was going back to Europe, and then I met him, and then 9/11 happened.
So you had
I couldn't get a visa. I couldn't get it was 8 years of trying to get my green card, and it was really a difficult time.
Wow, that's horrible. How'd you guys meet?
We met in a bar.
You did?
Yeah, it was. So he came back one night. He usually used to go, I told you, it was I have a 2-day week work. Right. He was coming back on Friday night very late, and that day decided to come back earlier. So he went for a beer in the area, and I was in the same bar,
that's
and
awesome.
we met there.
Wow, and there you go. As fate may have it.
23 years later.
And here you are. So now you was telling me the story that you were working, which is just crazy. You were coming back here for a day and probably killing yourself in that day, and then driving back.
Well, I would be planning what I was going to do on the drive.
Right.
So it's a 6-hour drive, and because of the way the schedule worked out, I got up at 7 o'clock on Monday morning. I'm driving out of town when everybody else is
flooding.
So I'm just
Still.
I could make it, there was times when I have made it in under 5 hours.
Are you serious? What were you doing, 100 miles an hour?
No, it's probably 75 miles an hour. But
you're hauling,
It's hauling the whole way. But usually it would be 5.5, 6 hours.
Okay.
And, I thought about what I was going to do, planned my whatever, and then I would get here, and at the very beginning, I didn't get off work till 8 o'clock on Friday night, and then I would drive
right from work.
3 o'clock in the morning, I'd get here, and then start working on the house.
Because you had to. Right.
And then I didn't start working until 1 o'clock on Monday, so I could get up at 6 and.
Yeah, so you had a little bit of forgiveness to get into town again, but my goodness, that's crazy. And then you switch your schedule then, right? And that's when you guys met. So you were doing the 5-day off.
And then it switched. Then it was a 2-day work, but then it was when I first bought the house, I had a 6-day work week down in New York.
What were you doing down in New York?
Working in a law firm as a word processor.
Wow. And then what were you doing?
So I was working, I came here through family, friends of the family that were connected for 3 generations. Wow. They gave me the internship, and then I kind of grew in their company and became the vice president for IT and human resource.
Okay. Wow.
And we were acquired by Altria, which is Philip Morris.
Okay.
And then so I worked with Philip Morris and Altria for 4 years.
No kidding.
But it was just an insane life. I was traveling 140 hours a month.
Whoa.
It was like a full-time job, just traveling to Richmond, to North Carolina, coming here during the weekends. It was just insane.
It's too much.
So,
are the lights okay for your eyes? They're
okay?
Okay,
good.
So I see you guys were hustling down there, both of you guys, and then you met, and then that's what happens. I mean, right? You're just kind of, how are we going to make this work, right? And then what was the decision? So how long were you together before you guys decided to come here?
So I think I came here maybe a year after we met.
Was it just because you were just well, wait a second, this is insanity because we're so busy and we never get to see each other and we got to do something to make this
It's because he was coming on Friday night, we would be together on Friday night, and then he was working Saturday, Sunday when I didn't have anything, my weekend, and then he was leaving to come back here on Monday, and I was working all week. So we only had a few hours a week, which was actually great.
And this, coming here, was it like, because now you had already been working for a couple of years on this to get it to where it was, and then you entered the picture, and then that changes things, right? Because when you fall in love, you're just like, well, wait a second, now everything's different, because my initial plan was this one thing, and now this other person shows up, and my life is different, and I need to make this, like, I need to do something here. So the catalyst behind coming here, was it to A, have a lot of time and to settle into a life together instead of having that crazy, like, you know, jumble of...
Yeah, he was almost done with the house by the time I met him, which was great. And
little did you know, you were basically nesting the house, right? You were getting it prepped.
Yeah. And then when we met, then I wanted to get out of the city just for sanity, indeed. Yeah. And it was really extreme. We're talking about biggest city, you know, in New York to middle of nowhere, 200-acre farm, you know, with nothing to do. Yeah. There was no internet access, no TV, no nothing, just reading and be together for the weekend. So it was nice. Yeah. Occasionally, I was not doing that every weekend. Well, it's almost
jarring.
But yeah, it was nice.
Because you're just like, it's polar opposite of that crush of mental New York City.
Right.
And then you come here and you're like, this
so that the resources you give you the energy to go back and work, you know, and have the energy of the city that keeps you stressed all week.
Sure.
And then be able to leave it on Friday night and come here and take a breath. Yeah.
Yeah. So now with that breath, though, at one point, what was the decision to go full time here? Was that your plan initially?
Yes.
That was the initial plan. And then, like, I was sitting at work one day and they sent out an email. They were going to downsize their secretarial staff. And if you were eligible for retirement, here's the little carrot that we're offering you. And I jumped out of my chair and cheered.
But you're young. I mean, you're young though. I mean, but you were just like... But it was time.
Well,
you knew it was time.
I'd worked there for over 20 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, I didn't realize
so
that.
I'd worked there for over 20 years, so I had my time in. By then I was 65 or 66.
Get out of here. Do you know how young you look? Are you serious?
Just got a facelift.
I just got a facelift.
Well, you look really young.
Thanks. But AI is not fooled. So if you take one of those programs and look at me, it knows just how old I am. And you know, it was just like, okay, well, I'm done. I can take this. And I sort of strung the whole thing out. They were like, sign now and leave next week.
Right.
And I was like, well, I do have these other projects that are online, and because I knew partners and stuff, they wanted me to stay. So I stayed for almost
another year.
Another year.
Because I was not ready to
right, because
quit my
you still
job.
gotta worry about you, right?
Because we were just acquired, we became a public company overnight. It was like all fun and exciting for me.
Right.
And so I didn't want to leave at that point. It was kind of early. Right. And then they decided to close our company right before COVID within a year. So it just kind of worked out.
Yeah,
for
the
us.
timing was just at this. You know, I had just finished up all the projects that I had to do, and then they were going to pay me for a year after I walked out the door.
Oh.
And so...
Dude, that's crazy.
So I had just one more year to go, and then COVID happened. So in March 1st, I was like, hey, I'm staying here. I'm going to work the last year remotely. Right. So I was here working remotely for a year while he just retired. Wow. So it kind of worked out.
That's, you know, I always say that's the synchronicity of the universe, just like letting you have your path. Right? Yeah. Because that doesn't happen very often. I mean, the fact that you were acquired and then they were shut right before the pandemic, like nobody knew the pandemic entailed or what it was going to entail, but they just shut it down and there's your window. Hmm. So you guys came here prior to the pandemic.
Yes, like November 19, and I came here after, so we closed our factory, we had a celebration. I was February 28th, I flew back here, and then the following Monday I was like to my boss, I'm not going back to New York, I'm done.
Wow.
Like I'm not taking the subway with this thing going on. I'm not taking, and that was my only way to go to work. I'm staying here.
Wow.
And then every 2 weeks they would, tell us, okay, well, let's work remote. And every 2 weeks they just dragged it until we basically never went back to the office.
Isn't that crazy? So it just naturally subsided.
Yeah.
It's just like worked itself out for you.
Worked itself out.
Wow, that's crazy. That's a beautiful story in and of itself, though. Because it doesn't happen very often in life.
Yeah.
Because it's not just your window.
Right.
And your window is dependent upon exponential amount of things. And the same thing with you. There's all these other things that are happening that relied on that one moment of like, okay, you can do this now.
Right.
So, and when you first came here, you only had the house. So you didn't have the building that you purchased through Anson's.
And that was, first time I came in, so we met in 2000, so it had to be in 2001 probably.
Okay.
And then we already thought that we wanted to retire here, but then it was 20-something years later. And I told him, hey, when you retire, I'm going to retire too, though I'm 20 years younger. So but the problem is when I put on the spreadsheet, income and cost. I'm like, you're missing some income. You're not going to be comfortable with just your retirement and your pension. Why don't you buy a house? And now that you've done it with the farm, why don't you just renovate a farm, get an income, and with one income, it would be just enough to get it by.
So had you had experience doing that? I mean, you didn't just
it was just because of the house.
Yeah. So you did it because you needed
so
to.
I learned
books
over
because there was no YouTube back then, so it was just like it could open any book of like a tiling book and just do it, and it was doing it right. So he had a gift for that, for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, not too many. Even if you had the book or a tutorial through YouTube or otherwise, a lot of people couldn't do it and can't do it. So you must have had.
And we couldn't find just anything. Now you can find everything online. Back then it was just Home Depot or it was just a few stores, and that's what you had. You couldn't really be too inventive or creative.
And I always buy the best tools I can,
which helps
to make up for the fact that there's stuff I don't know. I ended up, the house is finished. I got a barn full of these tools. And he's going like, well, you should do something else. And I was like, well, you know what? Let's, okay.
Well, because you made it. I did that with my show to a degree. You made the investment. You're like, now what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to keep doing this. Yeah. Why not?
The experience. I mean, that made a big difference to know.
Right.
And the first house we bought, we bought it on the credit card. Because that was it was a complete disaster. Was it a foreclosure?
It was a foreclosure.
And so we bought it for like nothing, but it was a complete disaster. We had to jack up the floors. We had to basically redo the entire house.
So did you do the same thing with that? You did the work, or did you start hiring some contractors?
So we started doing the work in there, and I hired kids to help me do stuff, gutting and what have you. And then, what did we on the second floor? I think once we got the grant, that's when we were able to hire like drywall people to put the drywall in.
Right.
I mean, we ended up, we did the painting and we did
we did most of the work and
refinished the floors, any of that kind of business.
Allowed us to do.
So the grant, that was a big sea change in your journey. Right, because up to that point, you were just self-financing everything. Because you did purchase that building without the grant. The grant came through because of your purchase with that building. Is that?
So the mayor in town came to us and she said, there's this grant out there that the town can get, but we need people who are interested, individual property owners in town who are interested in investing their own money, because it's a reimbursement grant, investing their own money and have projects. So do you have a project? Yes, we've got a project. And at the time, I think by then we had already bought the second building, because that was the one that was falling with a tree growing out of it. So we bought that building to save it from falling down. And So now we had two buildings, so we could present ourselves as two entities
Right.
who were like, we're investing in this building and we're investing in this building.
Right.
And then somebody else, the Copper Keg people, were also had purchased the building next to them. They were going to invest in that building, and so there was three of us to go in on the grant, and Mayor Miller was able to come up with $450,000. You can only do 100 per building.
I see.
So I don't know how she managed, because there was only three of us looking
Right.
for
Yeah, it's not
money.
enough, right?
But there's an area. So if you were in that area, you could qualify for whatever. We managed to finish one building and satisfy the grant requirements, finish the other building, satisfy the grant requirements.
Wow.
The grant wasn't closed yet. There was another building next to the first building.
I see.
And we're like, well, if there's another $100,000 left, we'll buy this building and do it as well. So that was the third one that
Right.
we did.
Oh, maybe.
And then when that happened, we realized we were up against parking issues because I've been trying to get parking. So then we bought this building over here for parking.
Pretty much.
You guys are developers now.
Which was
That's enough money.
never
like-
the plan.
Yeah, but that's all life is what happens to you. You're really busy making other plans, right? And it just happened. But your whole story is full of these like synchronicities that are happening to you, almost dragging you into this
Right.
without really much of there was a plan. But it seems like whether it was your jobs opening up and the pandemic happening and things like kind of saying, okay, you can do this now. And then you come here and then you buy, you get the house and you get the building and then this grant opens up and then there's money left over and you buy another building and then you buy another building for the parking. And before you know it, you guys are in deep in Cuba.
Yeah.
We're kind of in.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, when we first purchased the first building, we got to know Cuba for a while, and we realized the amount of leadership that was in town.
Right.
The Palmer House was the reason why we bought the building, because Main Street was a ghost town. There was the Copper Keg. That was it. There was nothing happening in town. The town was completely, ghost town, any time of the day, any day. So with the renovation of the Palmer House and a coffee shop and a store, it was like it's going to come back. So I think we kind of followed that, leadership, and then we had the mayor, who got grants, who told us about tax credits we could get from renovations, all this in the Chamber of Commerce, and all those people made us feel like that was the right place to invest.
Right. Well, and I think, because they saw people who are like excited and doing something, because I mean, that's the choir, right? They're already vested. And then here you guys come from the outside in, and you're like, whoa, we can do this. And they're like, yes, you can do this here, because we need you, because you guys have provided the catalyst string here is the Palmer. Right, it was like Mike and all of his like initial legwork and Tom and all that group, and then but you guys are this other generation and are at this other level of investment and this other level of care and love and just the stick-to-itiveness that you guys have displayed, and now you're inspiring other people.
Exactly, and that was the goal, is to really grow and concentrate on some buildings we have, not to buy the entire street, of course, but to show that what we're doing was actually working. Because when we came in to renovate an old building from 1876 with 14-foot ceilings is extremely costly.
I can't even imagine.
Exactly. So not only, I mean,
I couldn't either, and that It wasn't until he like
And
did
the architects
spreadsheets.
we got gave us like numbers that were so off that we would never have done it if we would have known how much it would cost. But the grant helped, tax credits helped, but on top of it, we had to make them quite expensive. So the only business model we had was to make luxury apartments. Luxury apartments in Cuba, New York, in the middle of nowhere. And that's something we didn't know that would work because we could not find anybody else in the area, including Olean, who would have this concept. So we kind of did, 2 apartments, and we had a waiting list. We had people fighting for it, and we still have people fighting to get the apartments.
I love this story.
And it actually kind of turned out that, like we were going like, oh, I don't know, like $1,000 a month.
People were
and
like insulting us on the street because we were like completely outrageous.
Oh, right, because they're used to 600.
Yes, exactly.
500, right.
And the rentals available around here are mostly Section 8 rentals, and they're around that fair market price. And we had to be way more expensive because we could not,
because of what we put in.
We put in so much money. Even with a grant, we could not afford to give it away at that price.
So now what you just touched upon is something really important, because the cyclical nature of what you guys are discussing is the bane of a lot of towns, because it's a trap that they get into with Section 8, and it turns into a cyclical deterioration of the town, because you're stuck in a cycle of poverty.
It's, it really, I have an uncle who that was his business model, and he would buy these places off of the tax auction or whatever and make them decent.
Yeah, they're livable, but it gets that cycle.
And then people would move in there. It would cost him $6,000 to buy the house. Well, by the time he was getting $850 a month for 3 apartments in the house, that house was paid for in a year.
Right.
So he was, he was like, this is great.
Yeah.
But then, like he got older, he couldn't keep the houses up. The people that moved in there weren't like caring for the houses in the same way that some people might.
Yeah.
Because they just don't have the resources to do that, or for whatever reason. And then those started to deteriorate, and now his sister is in the position of everything.
That's what you guys did, and that's why it's the second that I learned about you guys from Michelle, I told Roy, I was like, I gotta get them on. Even for the other episode, I wanted you guys on, because what you guys have done, you've changed. So the Catalyst with the Palmer drew together the community, right? But it didn't. It changed their mindset of what's possible, but in an ode to the past. In a lot of ways, it was restorative, and there was a renovation, and it did lead the way to a degree. But what you guys did was just accelerate this into the future, because you guys took an idea that people, and the best entrepreneurs do this. People probably thought you were nuts. They're like, you can't charge $1,000 for rent in Cuba, and you did, and you had a waiting list because it's a beautiful town, but they couldn't see it.
And
the
not only that,
problem with this is then we have people coming in, but then you have to have services to offer them. So they did have a coffee place, which was wonderful, but then you need more. You need a nice restaurant. You need, there's a gym, there's a spa, and now we have O'Malley's Business Place that offers hypnotherapy, massage, waxing, accounting, and everything else. So we had to also create businesses that those people could patronize to really revive the town slowly. And the problem is, well, who do you put first? If you put the business first, then they're not going to have anybody around to patronize them. They're not going to survive that. And if you put the people first, then they don't want to be around here if there's nothing to do. So it's kind of
a balancing
act that's, we know it's going to take time. It's just starting, but it's going to take maybe 5 to 10 more years to really be, really going on.
But listen, it's amazing what you guys have done. Honestly, I lived in California and in North, above San Francisco and all those little towns. And in each of those little towns, I was doing a kids television show, but I had to solicit small businesses for sponsorships. And you learn a lot through doing that. And all these little towns, and even including the town that I bought a house in, we ended up in Sonoma at the end, so that was a different story because there's a lot of money there. But a lot of the towns that we lived in didn't have a lot of money. Right. And in each of those towns, though, there was people that were catalysts that did exactly what you guys have done. And those towns literally thrived on the backs of those entrepreneurs and that idealism that they had, because those towns were down and out for a long time. And it wasn't until people just moved there, and a lot of it was internet money, but a lot of these guys with the internet money would move to these small towns and be like, no, we're going to fix this town. And they would, and people would just, you couldn't keep the people out.
Right.
And I think that's what you're going to have here, because I can see it happening here. And for some crazy reason, now as younger generations are starting to value, I think, the accessibility of what this town provides.
Yeah, I think in all the entrepreneurship, you have also a huge amount of luck. Yeah. And I think the COVID is actually helping tremendously, because a lot of people are coming here to find a better way of life and still can work remotely. So I would say, especially last year, probably a third of the people in our apartments were people who were actually able to work remotely.
Yeah.
There's good internet access, and then they have a couple of restaurant choices. They have everything they need to have a wonderful life and not to pay the rents they would pay in a big city, and to be extremely more comfortable than they would be in a big city.
And that's true. Now, if we can just real quick about the Palmer. So when you first started coming here, where was the Palmer in its renovation cycle?
So it was not open yet, but there was well underway.
I was actually coming here when the Country Heart store was on the first floor, and it had the original floor to ceiling shelves with the rolling rolling ladders and all of that kind of thing. And from what I don't know this to be true, but from what I understood, the guy really the owner wanted to tear it down, but he couldn't. Because of historical something.
Right.
So his plan was to just let it go, which is how it ended up being
in
need of...
where the roof literally fell in, and it was just a mess in here. So when you came here, that's what this was. So this was the idea was starting to germinate through the town that we have to repair this. So you hadn't purchased the Iva Ann's building yet? We hadn't
purchased Iva Ann's. I only went in there because it was for sale, and I was like, well, I had no plan in buying this. I went in there because I thought, well, let me get I'm curious, let's see what it looks like. And
was it like a ghost?
The people liked pigeons, so they had boarded up the windows but cut little entry holes for the pigeons. He had taken all of the windows out to restore them, boarded up the windows, but left the pigeonholes in there. And so it was just full of pigeons. Any of the open doors were perches, pigeon, for years.
And nothing had been done since the early 1900s. There were some billiard tables, and it was set up exactly, and we found some clips in the paper advertising for the billiard hall. And early 1900s, they haven't moved. So nothing had been done, but this guy must have started renovation of the windows.
He had taken the windows out to restore them, but they were just out.
Yes.
So
imagine 100 years of pigeon living there. It was horrifying.
It's eroded, essentially. The interior was just down to...
the paper was falling, the plaster was falling apart. They had a leak, so the entire tin ceilings were rusted to shred, and there was nothing left.
It was just sort of hanging there in this sort of thing. But the thing is, we're trying to get through it, where the doors don't open because of the pigeon stuff and whatever. And then and then at the top floor, I go into the meeting room, which is the main front apartment, 14-foot ceilings, wow. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what, this would make a great
So
apartment.
you saw it.
And then when I got out, the real estate agent said, oh, you know, somebody offered the guy $6,000 for this building. And I'm like, oh, that is, you know, that's insulting. Can you imagine? Wait, that's not what she's telling me. What she's telling me is this building can be had for a song.
Yep.
And that's when I was like, well, I mean, I paid 10, and she flipped out her phone, and I'm like, oh. No, he says he'd need at least 15 to cover his costs. I said, well, yeah, I could go for 15. Now she flips out her phone and she walks around the corner, at which point she probably says to him, listen, I've got a guy here. I think we can get more than 15. And she did. She got more than 15.
Well,
And then after I bought it, it turned out that he's the husband of my aunt by marriage, his sister.
oh, that's crazy.
Everybody's related here.
Everybody's related here, so.
Welcome to small town America.
So.
Well, that is crazy. So, but what year was that?
So that had to
2000?
be,
So 1918. No, 2018.
So 2018. So that's relatively
is that when we
12.
bought it? 2012. is when we bought it.
2012.
Oh, 2012. Okay.
2012.
So 2012.
And there was no, you know, like it was so cheap that then I was able to go to the tax people
Yeah.
and say, it's not worth this, it's worth this. So the taxes were low.
Yeah.
We didn't really have, and there was no pressure to do anything with it. So I just slowly, like I restored the windows, I
Sure.
did the thing.
It was a project.
We started, it became a project.
And we really didn't do much with it until, 2018.
Right.
So,
Wow.
it
So-
took for 6 years we didn't do anything with it because
But we
We
can also
didn't.
say in 2018, so from 2012 when you initially purchased it to 2018, there was a huge difference in what was happening here at the Palmer, correct?
Yes, because when we bought the building, the Palmer wasn't finished being restored. It was in the process, and then we found, but he kind of gave us the assurance that the town would become something. Because to me, once you have culture somewhere, like an opera house, then the rest comes in. You need culture, food, and once you have those two things, then life comes back. So,
And we're going to roll that back because I'm setting a light.
Okay.
That's awesome. Say that again. So, because that's true.
yes. So my thinking is when you have to have life, to have a village revive, you need to have culture and food. And it's kind of the same thing, culture and food, but having an opera house with shows and concerts and having a good restaurants would be the catalyst to have the revival of the rest of the town.
But your heritage and your roots and your DNA.
Correct.
So see, and now that's why I wanted to talk to you guys, because I was like, it makes so much sense what you guys have done here. I was like, I got to talk and see. But now I know, because that's where you come from. So the combination of you two is just magic, because you've got like the idealism, but you have the practicality, right? The pragmatism to do this.
Right.
And you also see these things. And where you come from, that's what it is. It's food and culture.
It is.
And it's like, it's entwined. And the quality of life there is really incredibly high because of that, because the values are correct.
Right.
And so you're reinstating, because we've lost, this country, like, in a lot of ways, because we've lost the heart of the small town wasn't what a lot of people think. And that's why I'm doing my show, because they think it's something else. They think it's like hillbillies driving trucks, and it's not that at all. It's good people doing good things, and it's a great, beautiful mix of people. It has nothing to do with the stereotypes that we've put onto this stupid American idea of a small town. That's not true at all. There's some truth to that, because stereotypes sometimes can be true.
Yeah,
but
it's a mix of everything.
Yeah.
You're having people from all over the place, from all levels of everything, of education, and it's been to me kind of surprise because
Right.
I wasn't really expecting that. And same thing when I worked in Richmond. I was in New York City, and I had this smug attitude of New York City.
Sure.
And when I started working in Richmond, I was expecting, the Southern
the
typical
typical
people,
stereotype,
like
right.
Not as sharp
Yeah.
as quick as the New York City people,
Right.
and it's so untrue.
And see,
It's
that's
completely
exactly
untrue.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I started moving around the country and started traveling, I was like, wait a second here, this isn't true at all.
Yes. And something here. And I think, yes, you're missing diversity for sure,
Right.
but you have incredible people trying to do incredible things too.
But the diversity will come when you give those
Correct.
things, and that's all it is. It's just like you said, it's providing.
Yes.
The
But you need to
atmosphere.
have the environment that's
Yeah.
going to be conducive to bring those people around.
Yeah.
That's going to feel comfortable to them.
I mean, who doesn't want to live in a place like this? Really, when push comes to shove, this is how we are. There's that old. It's been around for a long time, but we work best in groups of about 150 people.
Exactly.
Right, and so that's a small town, right? And my network is 150 people in a
works.
small town. But you move to a city, and your network's thousands of people, and you know what it's like in a big city. Just like when I was in San Francisco, you're just like, I meet somebody, they're awesome, they're gone. Meet somebody, they're awesome, they're gone.
You don't
it's
talk
transient.
to your neighbors. You don't know your neighbors.
Yeah,
You don't,
and then when you do
it's-
connect, that's what happens. The people are just moving because everybody's busy doing their career. But in a small town, there's that beautiful stability that you have. And
Yeah.
you can move in that circle.
That's true.
And what you guys are providing here is that format. If you want to just look at it like that, it's this formula: food, culture, beautiful architecture, beautiful environment, beautiful health that you can have here.
And that's what we know. That's basically, that's what I've learned from my childhood is, everything is celebrated with a meal. Everything is, we're going to concerts, to museums. Most of the museums were free in London. All the public museums are free. The public opera was £5, which is probably like $7. Everything was so accessible.
And that's what we're missing in this country.
And that's what we're missing is we need to, the first thing when we came here, I saw the cheese shops. I'm like, okay, that's already a big deal for me, but I needed the bread. So for the first year, I was looking all over to get good bread. And I didn't want to drive to Ornell to Wegmans, and I finally found someone in Olean who studied to.
Who was it?
He's Luigi.
Oh, was he across from? Is he down towards the last circle?
He's an accountant. In
I thought you
Olean.
meant, okay. There's this other guy that people talk about there
Okay.
who makes his bread. But go on.
And he's an accountant that apparently during the week he's an accountant, and on Friday he makes bread. And now he makes it about once a month, and it's just amazing bread. My sister came from France, and I got her a baguette. That's something you could actually sell in Paris with no shame.
Well, the fact that you even liked it is
It's
a big
amazing.
Deal. Yeah.
It's really the best bread I've ever had
Are you serious?
in this country.
I wonder if it is the
Absolutely.
guy. Is it a?
It has to be.
Because I've heard, so when I did my show there, this kind of came up that there's this guy, and he's just like this figure now there.
He lives in Cuba Lake,
Right.
and I think he's working in Olean.
Wow.
And
But here in this town, I mean, now you guys have developed, because you're part of this now, and you're part of the development of Cuba into this beautiful place now. And you guys made it, really, that's why I wanted you on, because, the Palmer is awesome, but it was a catalyst for you guys
Correct.
to do what you did, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are now beautifying this place and turning it into this awesome, you saw something that they couldn't see.
Well, we knew that's what we knew. So we basically came here and trying to reproduce the environment that we know is our environment.
Right.
So we're trying to, bring the good food. When the Paul and Melissa came with the idea of the restaurant, we were like, well, we need that. And we knew that Paul was cooking excellent food. And we tried his food before. We would not have said yes unless it would have been an excellent restaurant, not just a good one, but an excellent one. And they had wine tasting. So now we have wine taste. That's the type of thing that I'm used to, that I need, that I want as part of the culture to have a good, comfortable life. And we're trying to have the same quality of life that we had in the city in a different scale maybe, but with also advantages we could never have in the city.
It's a perfect balance
Perfect
to
balance.
achieve.
Yes.
Because it's a beautiful life. And all those beautiful small towns peppered all through the south of France.
Yes.
That's the way you live. You live in this small, beautiful community that's heavily reliant upon each other and the agriculture of the area. And it just kind of just all rolls out of this beautiful center.
Right.
And it changes the way that you see the world. And that's why Cuba is so important as a town. And you guys are right smack dab in the middle of this now. I mean, just pull yourselves out of this. Not to, I'm not blowing smoke. If you weren't here, there wouldn't be any I-bands. And you wouldn't have renovated those buildings. And there wouldn't be these high-end apartments. Because what does high-end apartments attract? People who have the money, who want to invest. Because that's an investment for them to say, you know what, I'm going to pay more money, but I want to live in this place. And it's going to attract more people like that.
Exactly.
And then you start to get your diversity. Then you start to get more restaurants.
Yes.
And now a brewery's going in over there, which is awesome. And that, you guys have really just taken that gauntlet and just ran with it. And you're creating this beautiful town now. It's like, I call it town raising. Like barn raising is an American thing, but it's like town raising.
Yeah, and I think we're just one piece of the puzzle. I think the puzzle is way bigger than us.
Oh, sure,
but we also have the understanding of how it works. It's not about just having apartments. It's not about just opening stores. It's about understanding what a town needs and how it needs it to have that right environment, to make it welcoming, to bring tourists. And we worked on many projects like the signs, those 2x3 signs we have,
awesome.
To have a walking museum. So it's something that would bring tourists just to spend a 2-hour tour and explore the town. So there's a lot of little things that can make a difference in a town, and it's just adding all those things together and have the right recipe to make it work. And I think it's that also that we're bringing to the equation, because I've been an executive and doing strategy for 25 years, so I kind of understand how this system works and how we can make it a little
You're hardwired
faster.
For it, really.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
kind of your wheelhouse, really, right? And then that's why you guys make a perfect team.
Just like a project, and he does the brunt of the work.
Yeah.
He's clearly not, but it's,
But you need that, though.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? There's
Yes.
the beautiful balance that you guys have, as a team is just, it's perfect, and it's totally what this town needed.
Exactly, and I think by chance also we purchased the O'Malley's building, the white building next to Ivy Ann, and that was a doctor's office before, and then it became a lawyer's office, but he didn't really remodel it.
Yeah.
So it was like all tiny little rooms. And we thought we would end up having an apartment in the back maybe, or just because we knew apartment would work. And then I was like, I think it would be important for the town to make a business center, a place where people could have cheap rent, just a few $100, nothing, big, but they can try, and it would be month to month, so they would not have to, commit for a long term, and they would have all inclusive, all the utilities, internet access, and they would also have me. I'm a business mentor for SCORE, and I'm going to provide that services to them so they can also have that knowledge on how you start a business, how you insure it properly, how you develop it, how you do your marketing, and kind of help them go through those first steps. So trying to grow them.
That's incredible.
Kind of an incubator type of thing.
Yeah, well, that's incredible, though.
So
I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were doing that down there. I knew there was multiple businesses in there, but I didn't know you were basically giving them the first start, and a good start, and to start in the right way.
And I was, after COVID, I was not really having the faith that it would work, because nobody wants to have a brick and mortar anymore. Everybody wanted to go online. But within a year, we have 7 businesses, and now the center is full. And it's working great, and they network very well together. So they're making open houses all the time. They're having events. They're doing training, which is another thing that matters, is having people making training so that can bring more culture and more knowledge. We have an hypnotherapist who moved from Buffalo to Cuba, and she trying to explain what hypnotherapy is to the rest of this area, which is definitely not an easy task.
Yep.
And she wrote a book. She's writing a column in the paper.
Wow.
And all those things, like I'm trying to nudge things, but that's what they do themselves.
Yeah.
And they make it happen. And they're growing their business, and they're very successful.
Well, they're entrepreneurs.
They're
And so if you
entrepreneurs.
give an entrepreneur a little shove, they'll generally start the momentum going on
Exactly.
that. Well, you guys are amazing.
And they get it, and it's flourishing. They come up with great ideas, and now it's kind of, rolling by itself. And I'm very excited to see.
How that
All women, unfortunately. I'd like a little more diversity.
Right.
But it's 7 women.
but it works.
Who actually having good businesses, and I think going to be very successful in Cuba now.
That's awesome, man. Thanks for doing this.
So clearly, we're going to have to buy another building for the men to set up their businesses in, and then we can, I don't know where.
That's awesome, though. Listen, you guys, it's really special what you guys are doing here. It really is. I mean,
It's
not,
fun. It's been a really interesting project.
But you're
'cause
making
it's really
a world of difference in a place that needs you and a place that is going to benefit for decades because of the groundwork that you're laying.
Right.
So, and thank you for doing this. Do you guys want to add anything else to this?
Well, one of the things that because we've had success with these different apartments,
paint there.
whenever did I get painted? So that's the color I painted today. Because we've had success with these apartments, whenever I run into somebody who's got a building and they're just maybe using the retail level and the upstairs is sitting there full of junk,
Right.
I'll be trying to give them a pitch
You can.
you got a couple $1,000s a month sitting up there.
Yeah.
You'll have to put some money into it, but we don't want to necessarily. I'm telling you, no, who'd rent? Okay, let me tell you who would rent. And I can tell them stories and point to examples where this is what we did.
Yeah.
This is how we figure out what our investment has to return to us. This is how long we have to wait for our investment to pay ourselves back. It's really, in addition to which, once you've upgraded your building,
Right.
if next year you decide, I'm moving on, you now have something more to sell
Yeah.
than an empty place.
Well, exactly. And people want a nice place to live, and they want a nice place to live in, and a nice town to live in.
Exactly.
It's a human character. It's how we are as people. Nobody wants to live in a tenement building or that slum place. We want nice places. We want nice things. We want nice people to be around, and we want to have nice attributes in our community. And you guys are providing that now, and that's because that's the mentality in Western New York. We're just going to let this go, and they don't see. But that's starting to change. And people like you are the catalyst for this because you've come in with a whole nother idea, and you're redefining the potential of this place. And you're seeing the potential, and you're making that potential a reality, And that's a big deal, man. It changes people's lives. Not only just their mentality, but it changes how they see their community and gives them hope. And it's great that you guys did. The best thing that I've heard is just you guys came in here and you're like, we can do this. And people are like, you can't do that. You're like, no, we can do this. And you did it, and it worked because you knew it was going to work.
Yeah.
Along the way, I had people would come in to want to look and see what was going on.
Right.
And, a couple of the people that came in along the way were attorneys or whatever, and they're like, oh man, you know what, you could get a lot of money for this. So it's sort of
Right.
there was no way to know if they knew what they were talking about or
Right.
not. But it was I think maybe we can, maybe we can.
Sure.
And even the Empire Block, the one in the corner that has Head Start in it, that had the tree growing out of it.
That was the tree builder?
That was the tree building. And I was working upstairs at the story block and saw a couple of women sort of milling around in the street looking at what is now the Alco Credit Union. And I'm like, I think I'll just go down and ask them what they're doing. And I did. And they said they were waiting to look at the building because they were looking for space for Head Start. And I said, well, there's this building down here. I happen to know, I didn't own it. But I knew
So
that
you were selling them on the building.
I knew the
So
code.
we wouldn't know it would be worth
Yeah.
buying because we would have somebody renting in long term.
It's just-
And as far
makes sense.
as I knew, they were in the market for buying a building.
Right.
I just knew the real estate agent. I had been into the building and seen it. The setup is such that the whole thing is connected.
Right, it's
So the
perfect.
whole downstairs is just like one long space. We get in there, there's moss growing on the carpet and the floor because the water is dripping down through the ceiling.
forest.
And here's these two women, and we're looking at it, and they decide, you know what? This space, you know what? This space could work for us. And I said, well, what were you buy? No, we weren't looking to buy a building.
Right.
I'm like, well, if I bought it, like, what do you spend on rent
Right.
for this?
Yeah, you're trying to, like,
They
kinda-
gave me a sort of an idea, and we went back, figured out what it would cost us to bring the place up to the spec that they would need, and it made sense. So then we just. And plus, we were concerned about losing the building.
Well, sure. Because you're right. At that point, you're like, wait, we got a buyer for this, right?
And so we bought it, and we went in there, and we renovated the thing, and then started with a couple apartments upstairs. There's 4 more apartments to do up there, and we're working on 2 of them now, and we're waiting for the last 2, which are going to be like, one is a ballroom.
Oh my God! Are you serious?
Yeah,
Does
one
it
is
have
a ballroom.
stage still?
So it was it was a ballroom. It was originally the what is it across
The Oddfellow.
It was the Oddfellows, and then it was one of those other groups, and so it's just a whole big open space.
There's a place in Clarence Center that they have. It's above the main store in town. And they did the same thing. It was a ballroom, and they kept the stage. That's why I asked.
Yeah, well, there had been a
was a
stage to it,
Right.
but it was where the Grand Poobah sat,
I
so you
see.
could see the outline of where the
That's so cool.
Persidium, like the whatever
Right.
thing was still there, and we have since started to like turn it into. It's just going to end up being a big loft apartment.
Oh my God! That'll be gone the second.
16-foot ceilings.
Glorious.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's stupid. That's
Yeah.
New York style.
10-foot windows,
Yeah. See, somebody's gonna get that, and they're never gonna want to leave.
and they're never
Yeah.
going to want to leave.
Yeah, because that's.
We have one tenant who keeps like, this is a great apartment, I'm going to live here. And then he'll be like, oh, what are you working on? He'll see something else
He
and go,
wants to jump
oh
away.
no, wait, I'm going to live here. I'm afraid to show him what we're doing.
Right. But that's amazing that you guys are doing that.
Yeah.
And on top of everything else that you're doing, you're preserving these buildings. You know, I mean, the bottom line is that you're taking something that you really can't buy nowadays,
Right.
and you're saving it.
Yeah, that was the other reason why Cuba was so interesting to us, is the rich history. There would not have been much history in town. That would be really no point to revive anything.
Right.
But the amount of history, there was 2 photographers living in Cuba,
Right.
so we have so much from the historical society. We renovated some
So you guys can
photos.
see like actual photo
Yes,
artifacts of what it was
yes.
supposed to look like. Do you have access to any of the old architectural plans at all at any of these buildings? Or
Not the architectural plans, just
But you have
photos. But they
photos.
have so many photos, and we renovated some, colorized some, made posters of some, and trying to really bring that as that's what we're trying to sell, is the history of Cuba is actually what makes it so rich.
Yeah, and it's right here still.
And it's right
That's the
here.
thing. It's not
Most
in-
of it
yeah.
is still there, still here. We're trying to preserve it.
Right.
But there's a lot of history here.
Yeah.
And it's recorded.
Well,
So it's,
listen, this goes back to your French heritage, right?
Correct.
Because I mean, those towns are
Yeah,
thousands
for
of
us,
years old.
yeah,
sometimes.
exactly, like-
so you're accustomed to like this.
to care
Like,
about the history, because that, like an old house, makes you feel so much more different than a new house.
Yeah.
It's like it's not the
Completely.
same vibe.
Yeah.
It's not the same feeling.
Yeah.
Like it's not just the molding. It's like there's something else that you have.
There's an intangible
Yes.
sense of art. So architecture is a lot. There's a beautiful quote, and I won't be able to even paraphrase it, but it's about that. It's about the energy that a building has.
Yes, to
and how it
know
makes you
that
feel.
people lived and died and had, children there, and how much life that was behind it,
Yep.
give you so much more meaning to your own life and what you go through, that you're going to feel different living in a space that actually
Yeah,
have
and
that
even
much
if you
history.
don't articulate that as a person,
Yeah.
we still can sense that.
Yes.
That still becomes us when we enter a building that has a patina of history, and it kind of can envelop anybody
it's
who enters
thematic.
it.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. But see, again, this is why you guys make this really special team, because your ability to recognize things based on just your heritage of who you are as a person,
Yeah.
how you grew up, and then your ability to see this stuff through and do all that, and then you've got the plan. I mean, just like this beautiful synergy between the
And
two.
when we rent an apartment, it comes with a little booklet that tells you the history of the
Oh, you're
place.
kidding.
Yes, where that you lived in this building. Here's what happened. Here's what was in your apartment and what makes it so special. And then we also take our tenants multiple times a year for an outing. We went to the yacht club last year. We went to see the Elton John impersonator like the year
So you
before.
guys are on another level.
So we're trying to really create that community, because we know that if they know each other, and some people that they're friends and they don't want that person to leave, so they're going to try to make everything possible to make them stay there, because that matters now that they're all friends and they have yet another reason to stay, which is not just the comfortable living, it's not just the time, it's also the people living here.
So if there's noise or problems, they can, because they know each other, they can work that out. So it really, it also kind of helps us that we're not having to be the go-between.
I was just thinking,
part of the business model.
Yeah.
But it's about the community.
There's a peripheral effect of that, though. And I was just thinking while you guys were talking, I was like, man, that's brilliant, because it's really, you're just bringing people together, and once you bring people together, they don't want to be apart.
Exactly.
And they can, because listen, I've never been a landlord, but I ran lots of businesses, and it's no different. And when there's trouble, there is trouble, and it can get toxic.
Right.
But if they're friends and they know each other and they care about one another, their tendency, before you ever even know about it, it's over. They've worked it out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's just brilliant. And it's just good to do anyways. And you're talking about the micro of taking your communities that you are responsible for
Right.
into the macro,
Yeah.
right?
And this, someone that that they're going to take care of your place, because they're going to be more respectful. They know you, and then they're going to, they're going to try to solve the issues. They're going to be more careful. They're going to let you know of anything going on. There's a certain relationship, with the landlord, but we're business partner. We basically, it's only thanks to the tenant that we can make this happen.
This is
without the
you
tenants,
guys
would not be happening.
Well, you guys are the modern. It's like this evolution of what it means to do what you guys are doing, right? Because you didn't just come in, buy some buildings, do some beautiful work, and check out.
Correct.
You guys are
The whole
stewarding.
goal is to create that community that would, rent us those places, but also take care of that community, make sure that they can have places to go out and places to be, know each other, and really care for the community as much as we do, because those people will have then children who's going to live here and grow here and want to come back. Because unfortunately, most people that we see that wants to move here, it's because they have family. So what's going to happen to the next generation when all the kids want to go to the big town and make the big bucks in a big job, in New York City? What's going to happen if everybody leaves town and not come back?
Yeah.
So we want to create families that's going to be here because they have a job, and they actually, the best way right now to get a job is to create it yourself.
Yep.
Unfortunately. But also, if you have your family, you're going to create your family here, and you're going to implant your kids here, and they're going to grow here, and they want to come back to what they lived in with the community they know. And that's what we're trying to do. It's, 20, 30 years down the line, but that's something we have to prepare today if we want to have Cuba, not die again in a few years.
But you've already done that. You're starting that. And,
We're starting that
and that's
today.
happening.
Exactly.
I mean, the fact that you guys give out the brochures or the little booklets about that's huge. That's huge to do. I wish somebody would have done that to me. I had to learn some of this stuff when I lived in Massachusetts because I lived in these beautiful old buildings. And you'd hear from the guy who's 80 downstairs what happened in the building. You're like, man, that would be spectacular if somebody
And they
gave
have a
me.
sign in front of their building that they can have a QR code. They can just also put their phone in and listen to him tell the rest of the story. So there's like always they can learn about that, the history, because that makes a difference. And they also learn of the other families working here. And a lot of people here are related to people that lived here 200 years ago.
Well, it makes all the difference.
It does.
And that's what you guys are doing. You're making all the difference in this town, honestly. And from the first day I was here, within 2 hours, your name was coming up. So think about the impact that makes. You're doing this show. What's it about? It's about Cuba. Oh, we have these guys here that are doing this thing, and they're an amazing couple, and they're doing all this work. And that's how people are so excited that you guys are here and doing what you're doing. And thank you for doing
It
that.
helps a lot when you're having fun, too.
Yeah. Well, you can tell you guys are inspired.
Plus we see now it kind of the fruits of our labor is our tenants enjoying the apartment, taking care of them, getting together and see them going out, because they're friends now, and like all the things that we thought would be nice, we see happening today. Having Anne open last year was such a fun event to us, because that means, hey, then now we have the good food. So now we have that culture coming in. Oh, we're gonna have the wine tasting. We're having brunch on Sunday. All those things that not only is fun for us, but we know those precursor of life in Cuba, of good life.
You know what I love that you guys because this is I think what we all want to do, but you did it. You just made the life you wanted in the place you wanted. And it wasn't there, and you made it happen.
And it seemed to be possible here because of the people. And once again, we would not have had the Palmer to kind of guide us and show us that, hey, yes, renovations are possible, and have the great mayor we have, and have the Chamber of Commerce we have. We didn't have that structure to feel like, hey, we're going to be supported, we're going to be guided, we would not have done it.
And that's a rare thing. It is. In the landscape of this country, to have a town that's so willing. And it is happening, and it is available, but, it is...
It's all about leadership, and when you have that leadership, then you want to follow, and then you become the leader and trying to have other people follow. And that's where we at now. Now we want other people to see what we did and give them this business model and say, hey, here's what you do, here's how you make it, affordable, how you get your tax credit. We want to really offer that as a business model for free to anybody who wants to invest money in town, so they can keep on doing what we're doing, because we're not going to buy every single building in town. And we don't want a community of just us. We want everybody else to be invested in this community. And by buying a building and renovating, then they very invested. And we want more of that happening. And it's slowly happening in town. I think it's happening.
It is.
And sometimes we see a store closing and we're like, oh, that's too bad. But we know it's going to come back. Versus a few years ago, that would not be the case. Now, within months, there's a new business coming in. So that gives us hope, and we know that something is happening, that it's actually reviving the way it's supposed to, because there's so much interest in this space.
Well, and that's your brilliance of the two heads over here, that you guys can do this like this. I mean, it's an amazing story.